Okay, till the time this gets loaded, let's also open. So yeah, that issue, or I can say the step that actually blocked us is now fixed. So we would be going in that direction as well. Meanwhile, I'll also open the database because otherwise we do have a short session and I guess opening the database might also take some time.
Okay.
Okay, so if you see, we do have a system available with us over here. Now, MTA YML. This is how it was looking alike. Let me just open that before we concluded last session. And that's how it is also looking alike right now. There is no difference in the MTA YML. Okay. I'm just opening the data explorer, so at least we can see the schema, how it would be looking alike and all. Each time it is installing some dependencies. I guess that's why it's taking a good amount of time. Okay, let me just meanwhile open the HANA Database Explorer. Yeah, so this is how it was looking alike when we actually concluded the session. It's again activating something. Yeah, so we do have a key and we do have a service that is connected with the cross container over here. And we do have a resource. So there is no change on what we discuss. It would have a name, a type, a parameter, a container name, and same we would be connecting over here with a group service replacements. It would have a key and it would have a service. But one thing to note over here is, or I can say one thing which SAP HANA Web ID was doing by default, and here we have to do that is in the DB, in the SRC folder, we do have a file called HDI config. So this is something I added. Okay, how I figured that out, that also I'll share with you. So in future it would also be helpful. But one thing to keep in mind, the CDS component, okay, over here, it's internally getting generated, it's internally getting compiled using the package.json. So this is relevant for that. How the system is identifying the behavior of CDS using this @SAP CDS and all the relevant dependencies. But the .hdb, I mean all the HANA database relevant artifact, how the system would be able to identify what would be its behavior. For that, we would need .hdi config. So if you see, if we are going with a synonym, we would have a synonym over here and it would identify, okay, this is the plugin that would come into play and that would do this particular trick. So how I got this file? Okay, let me tell you how I got this bug first, or let's just say there is a bug and how I resolve this. So I'll just open this. Meanwhile, if you see, I do have an applications. As I mentioned, while deploying, it was failing. So I opened this BTP DB trans, I guess that was the name. Let me see. HDI BTP, yeah, it's BTP DB trans. Yeah, so I just opened this particular one. And when I went into the logs, what I found is, okay, it just stops everything. Okay, it just refreshed everything. Okay, so what it does is it throws me an error saying .hdi config. The config file for the HANA database artifact doesn't exist. Now, if you see closely, we generated one HANA database component as well. Here also we do have a DB, we do have a SRC. Okay, internally we do have a HDI config, and this is something we did not edit. It was there by default. And this is the same file which I just copied over there. So it's see, if you see it's same one all 06, I guess 140 lines of code. The same I just pasted over here because the log was saying HDI config file is missing, because for us to have any sort of execution, for us to have any sort of HANA artifact getting compiled, we want a HDI config file. Does this make sense?
One thing, Sumit, when we are creating that folder, automatically that HDI config related, but automatically it is coming, right?
in the native HANA portion, it is automatically doing that. So if you see this BTP DB Central, this is not a CAP project, right?
Yes, yes.
Here it is automatically coming, but in the CAP, it's not coming, and that's why I just copied this file and pasted over here, because while I was trying to deploy that, I was getting that error in the log. But as it's a trial version, it is keeping, and I mean it's clearing out all the logs time by time.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay. So, and that is why that particular component was not getting deployed, because it was not able to figure out plugins. Okay, that plugin which it needs to identify the synonym. Now, if you see, after that, I tried, build and deployed. And if you see, if I just go in over here, I would be able to figure out the synonym. Can you see this synonym? It's BTP, B, trans, EMP. I don't have a table with that name now, because what I did is I have specified in the data model over here, that this is exist, this does exist. Okay, so it won't create a table. For EMP dummy, I did not specify that. So it created BTP underscore B trans underscore EMP dummy. That's what we would be able to find. But this particular component would be there in the synonym one. Okay, let's just extend our example with one more. So I guess it would be more clear then. And one more thing, that whenever we were doing a local execution, that local execution has also a kind of a framework issue, that it's not, I can say, recognizing that key altogether. But when you try to deploy that, this HDA config file would be considered. So these are kind of a BAS, or I can say BAS trial may be that issue, because in the real one I have used, but in the real one it does not have this all the glitches. Okay. Now, but let's just try to extend this example. So what I do have over here is EMP, right? I do have a EMP. I don't have a department table. So let's just extend our existing database over here with a database one, a table and a view, and then maybe we will create an exist also on top of that. I'll just go over here. I'll just say department.hdb table. Okay, so all we want is the same kind of column table with the same namespace. So I'll just say column table over here, and we would create it in the same namespace. It would be of 36 character, because we want GUID, and we want this log as well, and the primary key would also be the same. One more thing is, whenever I do have a department, it would have its short description, or I can say department name. I can say NVACR, and let's just say of around 50 characters, let it be. Okay, now, this is a department. So let me just rename this to department. Perfect. Now, as we have created a department, let's also create a view. As we did that earlier, I am kind of going a bit in a flow, because I expect we are already knowing that. So what it would be a view file, a v1 view, which is a direct pick from the table that we created. And how it would be looking like, same as that of the view. I can say open with code editor. What we did over here is we selected all the column. Same way over here, we would be picking the same namespace, and we would be generating a view. You can say view as select, and this would be my department one. Right. And what all columns should it contain? It should contain all these columns. Okay, and it would be from, and what would be the table from where it would pick the data? From this. Save this. So I do have a view. What would be my next step? Again, for anyone to use this view, it should be exposed. And for me to enable this view to be exposed, I have to make it part of the view. All four views, I have to make it part of the role. Okay, so I'll just say open code editor, and I want to add one more object. So I'll just say the new object which I want to get exposed is this. And again, it would have the same privileges. Okay. Same way, we would have this in a multiple places. Okay, but this would be privilege with grant option because this is a privilege with grant. We want the calling application to enable granting this privilege to anyone else. I'll just say copy this, paste it over here because this is something we did. So that's why I'm just saving our time. You can say privileges with grant option. That would be for department. Now I want to go with a G role. Now, so we do have this role as well. Now what we would be doing is we would be deploying this DB because yeah, one more thing to remember or one more thing to observe over here is even though I do have this project in the same workspace, I do have this backend object, backend project also in the same workspace. Still, this project won't be able to recognize or view this DB project until and unless it's not deployed because they are not connected with each other. Okay, whatever connection we make would only with the deployed application. Okay, so what I'll be doing is I'll just say I want to deploy this and how we can deploy an backend application. I'll just go in the empty YML and I would like to have a separate version. So if you see this empty archive, you can also have it deployed in the same version, but I just want to keep have a version management. That's why I'm just changing the version and saying it's 0.0.2. So it's the next version. So whenever it would build this, I can say build empty a project. It would build a new archive file. Can you see a new empty archive file just got built? Okay, I'll just say right click over here and I would deploy this empty project. Now, one more thing. It's not required to keep all the mtar file. If let's just say time by time, for example, 0.0.2 is our latest version. If you want to keep the past version, you can keep it for some time, but unless and until it's required, it's not required for you to keep all of them. You can keep on cleaning your workspace. That would save the space of your workspace because if you see, the BAS gives us a very limited amount of space. Okay, so the mtar file would be consuming the highest space out of that. Okay, so I usually prefer deleting the old archive file. And if not required, then you can also delete all the archive file. And whenever required, you can generate those. Okay, so I guess once it's deployed, I'll just delete this 0.0.1. 2, I'll keep for some time in case I am required to deploy it due to some other reasons. Okay.
Sumit, I have a doubt. Like in ABAP, we have a versions, right? We can go to the back version and the front version.
Yeah.
Whereas here also, whether we, for example, if you delete that version 001, if you want to revert back, means it's not possible here, right?
So the thing is, in the ABAP, we do have a concept of a shared resource, or let's just a shared project. So what we ideally do is whenever I am writing or doing any sort of change in the object, it would be visible to the world outside. Now here, whenever or whatever project I am developing, currently you are not able to see that all together, or you are not able to consume that.
Okay.
How it can be done is using GitHub
Okay.
repository. So whenever
So
I'll be
here the
pushing that,
versions also, versions reverting of back version also, is it possible in the Git repository in this
yeah.
scenario?
So yeah, exactly. So what you have to do is you have to remove, or let's just say revert those pull requests.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
once you revert that, your old version would be restored, then you can again build and deploy it.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So
understood. Okay. So here we do have an empty YML file, and what is the name of the database? It's HTI Employee Central. So I did have that open somewhere. Yeah, over here. So let me just refresh this. If I just expand this, I do have a tables. Department is also available, and I do have a view called VV1 department. If I just click on this, I should be able to see all the column, and it's part of my schema. I should be able to open the data as well. Okay. So I am this far, I am able to have the tables, views, and everything created. Now, what we were doing is, let's just consume this view in a backend service. So I'll just go over here, and here I'll say, here I will say, for example, in the DB, I'll add one more synonym. So synonym is already there. I'll just add a reference to that. So I'll just say open code editor. So we learned in the earlier session, let's just revise that whenever I am creating a synonym, what are the steps? We have to first add the resource to the remote container from which we want to consume the data. We define that resource over here, name cross container of the existing service or Cloud Foundry CF existing service, name of the container and the service. Then we used in the requires of the DB. Here we specified the group as a service replacement. Okay, because it's an existing service that we are using. We are specifying the key and the service name. So where this key is being used? This key is being used whenever we are defining the HDB grant. This grant is to grant the role that has been defined over here in the database to the application which is consuming that. Okay, so we define this key, DBEC, whatever we define over here, and we can have two level of roles, object owner and the application user. In the container role, object would be capable of granting this role to any sort of application which is further consuming this. And that is why we would be specifying all the role with the hash. It means role with the privilege with grant option. In the container, in the object owner level, application user level would be containing the default role. Okay. Post which we would be creating a synonym. Synonym should contain the name of the object that we want to get created in the application where we are consuming. So here we want to create an object with a particular name, for example, BTP, B trans and department. Okay, so I can do that. So for that, I would just say comma over here. And here I can say BTP, B trans. Why I am going with that? Because I want to, yeah, there are also a reason why I am going with BTP, B trans. I could have choose anything else. But that BTP BE trans is nothing but my namespace. And I want to say that a department is already existing. A table for department already exists. Don't create a new one. I can say CDS persistence exists over here. I'll be defining an entity whose name would be, for example, department. And it should also have a CUID and a manage. Here I want, that is the column name. What is the name we define? That the same we should be specifying. That's why I'm just going with a definition over here. So it should be a name column. So I'll just say name of, let's just say string 50. Just save this. So what should be the name of the synonym whenever I create? If I want to connect that synonym with the entity I'm defining. If I don't want to connect with them, then the name I can keep it as anything. But I want to connect, right? So what I'll do is I'll just say BTP BE trans department. So I can say BTP BE trans, and I want a department. So I'll just say copy over here, and I'll just copy the name over here. And here I should be defining the target, that from where actually this particular object would be connected. So I can say object. The object I'll be getting would be from the view, because I would always prefer connecting the object with a view and not with the table. So this is the name of the view. And here I would be going with a schema. So schema would be the similar one as we had it for the other one, because we are getting two objects from the same container. The schema name would be the similar one. Okay, we did that. So we do have a department, we do have this, and now I want a data model. In the data model, I specified the same one, and here I am saying it exists. So I am not expecting any separate table to get generated. Okay, now next thing is I should be able to, okay, let me just open a terminal. I'll just go with a BTP BE. What is the name? It's EMP trans. Okay, it's taking some time. Let's wait. Now, as I do have a department, if I want to use this anywhere, then I have to expose this. So I'll just say SRV over here, employee trans service. I'll just say entity employee, sorry, it's a department one, as select from, I can say BB dot department. That's where it is getting the data from. I'll just say CDS watch to see what kind of service is getting generated. Then if I just go in my, okay, I don't have a test folder. So let's just say if I open this in a new tab, I do have a, so I do have a employees. I do have employee reuse. I just named it as a reuse because we are reusing the already defined component. And we are also having a department. Here I do have a department ID. Here I do have a department and the ID, but I have not created a relation between both of them. But I can also plan to create one. We can also create one relationship over here. How I can do that? We learned that in the earlier session. You can say, rather than specifying it like this, you can say department association to one department. Okay, so it would create a relationship with this department. It would say the employee should have a department ID assigned, and that department ID should be either of the one which is specified in the master data. Correct? So if I just go over here, I just refresh this, then what I can see over here is this department ID is still there, and I do have a navigation property getting generated over here called department. Okay, and it is getting connected to this. Now, as I do have this, okay, in the gen folder, if I see, I do have a DB and SRV. I do have gen component. It says employee reuse, and I can say which do have employee reuse and employees, but I do not still have the uh, department connected to that. Okay, so I'll just cut this. I'll just stop the execution, the local one. Okay. We want the files to get generated correctly. So what we would do is I'll just create one local execution, or I can say one run configuration that would run this, and a gen files should get generated, should start generating. If I just go over here in the run configuration, I can see all of this. Let me just add one more.
Sumit,
Yeah, please.
existing one we cannot use.
If you mean this one,
Yes, latest
yeah,
one
you
we can
can.
use.
Okay, you can. What you can do is I'll just disconnect this
Mm.
and I'll just reconnect. So it would start connecting that. But ultimately, as I mentioned, this BAS has a glitch that it would it's not able to identify the HDB grants. So ultimately, it would still give us the error it was giving some time back in the local execution. But when we deploy it, the deployment would work because that is a global container where it's finding both of them. It's finding the remote container which we are trying to connect and this one as well. Okay, I'll just say connect and it would say, so I disconnected that, the fourth one, and I'm now trying to connect this. If I just say okay,
Every time we need to, if at all, if you are doing anything, every time we need to disconnect and we need to do this process, then it will only single one you can use it, right? That run configuration.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
All we have to ensure is before deploying anything, all you have to do is you have to just keep on checking that over here. If I just go over here, it is saying that it just generated Jan in the DB SRC Jan, it just generated this department. If you see employee transactional dot department dot DB view, this is something that we would need because whenever we are building a project using build my MTA, it is connecting this particular all the gen files. So here this department should be generated. If I delete all these gen files which just got generated and I deploy that, then you won't find anything in your data container because this generated file are responsible for that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and this is what I am calling. I mean, saying from my experience, past experience, we have faced many issues such kind.
So if at all that is not generated means we need to deploy that MTA file then, right?
You have to first generate an MTA file. You have to run that. Once you run that, the gen file would get generated. Those gen file, once it is there in the folder, then you have to build. So first step would be generate the mta.yml. How you can do that? Using CDS add MTA.
CDS MTA, yes.
Perfect. Once it is
Yes.
done, MTA file would be there. Then check and verify whether all the modules are there. The modules, if you see, are connected to what? It's connected to the generated folder over here.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
is why if the generated files are not there, system won't recognize anything that you are, it's not recognizing your DB and SRV. That's not relevant. It is only connecting to your generated folders.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. Fine. Then. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. One more thing. So now, as we did same for the DB, we would be going with a, I can say, backend service next version. Okay. So as I told you over here, I don't want this empty archive file which was generated earlier. So I can right click and just say delete. That would be totally fine. It should not have any implication on the running version because this is totally local. So this got deleted just to save some space. Over here, I do have two already available, but I don't need any of them. So let me just delete one. Let's just keep the latest for now. Here I want a 1.2.0, for example. I'll just save this. And now I'll just build. So whenever a empty archive files get generated, what would be the name? Name of your project underscore the name underscore the version. So I can expect 1.2.0 to get generated. I'll just say build MTA project. So as you can see, it would first generate the make file. This make file would get deleted and it would be converted into this 1.2.0. So these are the internal process. We are not going to intervene into that, but it should, like, we should be knowing in case something fails. If we are not able to see the make file also getting generated, we should be fine. We should be clear. Okay, which particular process would be failing internally, just for our knowledge. Now I'll just say right click over here and deploy 1.2.0. If you see, it is binding the remote service, deploying the new version of your DB. It would also start your backend service. That's what it is doing. Here it is unbinding and binding to your remote service, the consuming one. Now, if I guess in the applications, we should be able to see some sort of progress, something which would be occurring. Okay, so it just deployed this application got staged, and now it's starting the backend one. Okay, so now this just got deployed. It's available at this URL. That's what the system is saying. Okay, now if I just go in the dev, I can see BTP DB trans, BTP BE employee trans. Okay, so this is my BE employee trans. If I just click on this, this is my deployed application. This is not local execution. These are deployed one. And here I am able to see the association, navigation, whatever I created, the department which I created. Currently, I can see I don't have anything in the department because we did not added anything, right?